What we do here is go back.
Finishing technologies in private housing construction and materials used for this according to the architectural canons. The plinth is a part of the building lying on the foundation, and is considered as a transitional wall between the foundation and the outer walls of the house. The complex of works on the exterior finishing of the entire building includes measures for finishing the basement. While the finishing materials for the basement of the house are somewhat different from the materials chosen for finishing the walls of the house. This is due to the proximity of the basement to the ground, where it is more susceptible to moisture and cold air than the walls of the residential building themselves. Thanks to the development of modern technologies for finishing the exterior surfaces of residential buildings and the creation of new finishing materials, builders of private houses have received ample opportunities for arranging original and practical plinths within affordable prices. Builders and architects have different interpretations of the purpose of the basement. Builders consider the plinth as part of the foundation, while architects consider it to be the lower part of the wall. This is interesting. From the point of view of ancient Italian architects, the plinth is an independent structural element, the foot of a building, column or monument, lying on the foundation. The Italian word zoccolo literally translates as a shoe with a wooden sole. In accordance with building codes, the foundation walls must be raised above the ground to a height of 15 to 250 centimeters. This visible part of the base, called the foundation wall, is called the plinth. The basement is an intermediate structure that combines the load-bearing walls of the building with the foundation. On Fig. Below is a concrete foundation, in which the plinth is brick. The main functions of the basement wall of the building are perception of the load from the upper part of the residential building, bearing function, ensuring the stability of the building, creating a solid pedestal, the perception of linear deformations during the settlement of the house, support function, protection of walls from the effects of atmospheric sedimentary moisture, waterproofing function, providing thermal protection for basements, heat insulating function, fencing the space between the piles and the grillage in the case of a pile foundation, enclosing function, creation of an appropriate architectural appearance of the erected building, architectural and decorative function. The basement floor, also called the ground floor, should not be confused with the basement and presented as a kind of dark, damp room. It is important. The basement floor is located inside the perimeter of the foundation walls and can be equipped in buildings with any type of foundation. The basement can only be equipped inside the strip foundation. In some variants of foundations, such as piles, the plinth is simply absent. In the case of a pile foundation, the pile heads are raised above the ground to a height of at least 20 centimeters. And a grillage is laid on them, which serves as a support for the walls of the house. To close the resulting free gap, a false plinth is formed by laying piers of facing bricks or sheathing piles with decorative panels such as siding. Finishing the foundation will be inexpensively provided by using materials used for the outer cladding of the facade, taking into account the location of the false base. Using the example of false plinths, the main differences between the basement and the basement become clear. The walls of the basement of the house are always load-bearing. The load from the upper floors of the building is partially distributed on them. The walls of the basement are not always load-bearing, but can only perform enclosing and architectural and decorative functions without the perception of weight loads from the building. The ground floor can be buried to a slight depth or even be above ground. Basement, a room buried in the ground. The basement can be classified as a basement, while the basement is not always buried in the ground and cannot be considered a basement in such cases. Ground options for the ground floor are preferable in regions with deep freezing of the soil and during construction in areas with closely spaced groundwater. The arrangement of basements in such cases is very difficult and is associated with significant financial costs. Despite such a significant difference in purpose and design, the ground floor and the basement allow for identical practical applications in relation to each other. On their areas you can equip a workshop, a garage, plan a living room and even build a full-fledged sauna. Practiced options for finishing the basement of the house take into account its location relative to the plane of the outer wall, a protruding type, b. in one plane, flush, in, sinking. The protruding type of foot gives the building the appearance of a powerful building of increased stability. From an architectural and aesthetic point of view, the protruding type is more advantageous than the foundation walls, made flush or recessed. However, they necessarily require the construction of a protective cornice with drain functions to prevent water from running off the walls onto the basement. The construction of a protruding foundation wall is advisable for houses with thin walls or when building a warm underground for its thermal protection. In order to compensate for the small thickness of the outer wall with its width, a sunken basement, when the outer wall hangs over the foundation, is considered more efficient and reliable in terms of protecting the waterproofing layer from mechanical stress and atmospheric moisture. It is more economical in terms of material consumption, since the thickness is less, and the construction of a drain cornice is not required. But as for its aesthetic qualities, the opinions of architects differ diametrically. Some are convinced of the aesthetic loss due to the impression that the house has a reduced stability compared to the actual one. Other designers consider the outline of the sunken plinth to be more compact and modern. Sometimes the plinth is built flush with the plane of the wall. It is believed that in such cases the waterproofing line is broken, and the location of the waterproofing layer itself looks random. The purpose of the basement finish. Requirements for finishing materials. The basement experiences a greater volume of loads than the underground part of the base of the building. Along with the weight load from the entire structure, it has to counteract the buoyancy forces from the soil during soil heaving, that is, the mechanical loads on the base turn out to be multi-directional. It is clear that for finishing the surface of the basement wall, it is necessary to use materials with increased quality indicators compared to traditional cladding. In addition to mechanical loads, they must withstand the effects of the environment well: temperature fluctuations, negative impact of sedimentary moisture, rain, snow, meltwater, condensing fog, exposure to solar ultraviolet, wind loads. As a result, finishing the basement of the house is carried out for the following purposes: minimizing the negative impact on the foundation and the lower layers of the outer walls of the weather conditions of the environment, preventing the penetration of dirt and chemical compounds into the materials of the walls of a residential building, provoking the processes of destruction of the foundation, protection of the foundation from the possible formation of mold, fungus, insects. In order for the base to fully perform its functions for a long time, it must be protected from wind loads, temperature extremes, atmospheric and all-penetrating ground moisture. Before proceeding with the finishing of the basement wall, it is necessary to carry out a set of measures for the so-called rough protection of the basement. There are 5 main aspects of the draft protection of the basement from possible destruction and the prevention of distortions of the geometry of the building itself. laying drainage communications along the perimeter of the basement wall to create a drainage system for the basement. A trench is dug into which drainage pipes are laid with perforation over the entire surface. Through them, the moisture that has got inside will be diverted to the drainage well. A trench with drainage pipes laid in a special way is sprinkled with sand and gravel, then filled with earth. Applying waterproofing to the outside of the basement wall. The basement is waterproofed after the initial waterproofing of the foundation base and armored belt. Sequence of work. The foundation superstructure is coated with hot bitumen or bituminous mastic. Several layers of roofing material are applied on top, covered with a penetrating waterproofing composition. The blind area is called an inclined strip filled with concrete around the perimeter of the building, coming close to the basement wall. A slight slope, away from the wall, prevents water from accumulating near the foundation superstructure during rain or when snow melts. The width of the blind area must be at least 25 centimeters greater than the size of the roof extension. Sequence of work. Remove the top of the soil. Lay a drainage cushion of sand and gravel. A layer of concrete is poured over the pillow with a slope from the wall. Foundation finishing. Cheap plastering the surface of the plinth. It is carried out in order to level and strengthen the surface. This reduces the likelihood of cracking, provoking subsequent possible destruction. Usually, in preparation for plastering, a metal mesh is pre-packed and then plaster is applied to impart water-repellent properties to the solution. A plasticizer is added to it. Installation of EBS. These structural elements act as a protective visor for the foundation wall. The EBS can be ceramic, steel or aluminum, plastic or brick. Upon completion of the complex of protective measures, they proceed to the main finishing of the basement. Plinth finishing methods. Among the methods of finishing the basement wall practiced in private housing construction, the most popular are the following technologies. Applying decorative plaster, creating relief compositions imitating granite, marble or natural stones. The use of decorative siding panels, finishing with profiled sheet and corrugated board. Resin tiling, facing with natural or artificial stones, facing bricks, clinker tiles, sheathing with thermal panels, finishing with slate and cement particle boards. Finishing with decorative plaster. Finishing the plinth or facing the foundation cheaply without loss of operational and aesthetic qualities can be done by decorative plastering. The main advantages of this technique are sufficiently high vapor permeability, resistance to temperature changes, ease of application to the plastered surface, wide variety of color palette. Good maintainability for repair and restoration work, affordable price. Additional information. Experts believe that when comparing the entire range of indicators in terms of cost, quality, durability, maintainability and practicality of the coating, finishing the plinth with plaster turns out to be the most advantageous option. Among the shortcomings, users note: small operational resource, the need for constant updating of the paint coating, difficulties in washing the surface from contamination. Modern trends in the artistic and decorative design of the facades of residential buildings have not left without attention the plaster finish of the plinths. In private homes, the most popular types of plaster are now used, creating exclusive compositions containing inclusions of granite chips or other stones, texture compositions used to create paintings, drawings, color mosaics, glazing compositions that help in creating interesting effects, relief decoration under the stone. Siding finish when finishing the basement of a private house in Moscow with its climate and colder regions. Siding panels are often used, The term basement siding has even entered into construction practice. At its core, siding is a universal way to finish any surface of a house. However, basement sheathing panels are somewhat different from classic wall counterparts. If wall siding is represented by panels with a thickness of 0.7 to 1.2 mm and a length of almost 4 meters, then reinforced panels are produced for the basement with a thickness of 2.5 to 3.0 mm, almost 3 times thicker than wall cladding, and a length of 10 to 1.13 meters with a width of up to 47 centimeters. This ensures increased resistance to mechanical damage, including accidental impacts, and rigidity with respect to temperature deformations. House basement materials in the market of facing materials. Basement siding is represented by plastic and metal panels that imitate natural stones, wood, and brick in texture. Plastic plinth panels are made from PVC and polypropylene resins, modified with special components to improve strength, resistance to fire and precipitation. Metal, steel and aluminum. The main advantages of basement siding include increased strength and rigidity of each panel individually and of the assembled structure as a whole, resistance to the negative effects of biological factors, fungus, mold, insects, excellent moisture resistance, increased mechanical strength in relation to impacts and chipping, wear resistance to abrasive action of dust and debris particles, small deformations due to temperature differences, building settlement or soil swelling. Wide temperature range of application. The panels do not lose their properties both in severe frost, up to -50 degrees Celsius, and in heat exceeding +50 degrees. C. Resistance to solar ultraviolet. The material does not quickly age, and the color does not fade. Excellent maintainability. If necessary, the panels are easily replaced. Ease of care. The panels are easily washed from dirt. A significant disadvantage of basement siding is the need to equip a special frame, which significantly increases the cost of the finishing material and the laboriousness of finishing work. Installing basement siding panels also has its pros and cons. The advantages of the panel installation process include the following aspects. Panels are installed on any type of plinth. No pre-leveling of the wall surface is required. High culture and cleanliness of installation and installation works. The fastening of the panels with the frame battens by means of self-tapping screws and with each other with spikes and clamps ensures a rigid fixation of the siding on the plinth. Installation problems for plinth panels include the need to properly position the frame under the panels, painstaking installation, the likelihood of marriage when connecting panels, which may subsequently affect the appearance of the base and its performance, the need to use a special tool for cutting and fitting panels. Finishing with profiled sheet and corrugated board lining the plinth with a profiled steel sheet is to some extent an analog of the technology. Siding. Only the plinth panels were replaced with corrugated board or corrugated board with the corresponding modification of the frame. In addition to the protective function, finishing can also be performed for decorative purposes. It is important. Facing the basement with corrugated board refers to budget options for finishing foundation and basement walls and clearly outperforms other technologies in terms of price, quality. Among the shortcomings, 2 factors can be noted: the monotony of the corrugated pattern, which is perceived by some users as an indicator of an unpresentable interior. The need to take into account the geometry of the overall design of the building. Since the wave bends of the sheets may not correspond at all to the artistic style of the building, do not fit into the design. House basement materials. Resin tiles. The plinth tiles produced with resin binders are only 3 to 5 mm thick. Tiles are easily bent at any angle, they can even be rolled up. So this facing material is commonly called flexible stone. The length of the tile varies from 24 to 36 cm with a width of 5 to 7 cm. Resin-based tiles are produced with a smooth and embossed surface that imitates the entire range of natural facing materials in color and texture: stone, wood, facing brick. Foundation cladding. Cheap. Due to their high flexibility, resin-based tiles can be easily laid on plinths of any configuration, including arcuate geometries. Features of the installation of such tiles are as follows. When laying, the tiles are glued with special glue to the previously leveled and primed surface of the basement wall. It is allowed to lay tiles directly on concrete surfaces and on the top layer of thermal insulation. Tiles are easily cut with a knife and large scissors. The time of complete drying of the glue is 2 to 3 days. Finishing with stone, brick. Clinker tiles. Finishing the basement under the stone, or under the brick, gives the residential building solidity and monumentality. It is not at all necessary for homeowners to spend money on granite, marble, rubble stone or brick. The decorative functions of finishing from natural stone materials are successfully performed by various types of facing tiles with a texture that imitates natural stones or bricks. Natural stone tiles. It is a complete decorative alternative to classic stone foundation masonry. On the back side, the tile is smooth, and on the front side, the stone is not processed, retaining its natural originality. Fake diamond facing tiles, under the stone, imitating natural stones, are made on a cement sand basis with the addition of paint, plasticizers and protective compounds. Artificial stones have high strength characteristics, do not absorb water, and are easy to clean with a water jet. Artificial stone is more ductile than natural stone, so it can better withstand accidental impacts and sudden temperature changes. Clinker tiles are a variant of facing bricks made by annealing a special refractory clay. Sintered clay is very hard and its glossy surface is highly hydrophobic. After laying, clinker tiles create an imitation of brickwork. It is important. Clinker tiles are highly chemically inert to negative environmental influences and surpass natural and artificial stones in their durability. House basement materials. Facing brick is a natural ceramic product that fully imitates brickwork. It has high heat insulating and strength qualities, which are so necessary to protect the basement and the entire facade. Finishing basement thermal panels. Sokal thermal panels are facing tiles equipped with a heater on the inside. The facing decorative material of thermal panels is clinker tiles imitating natural stones, brick, shell rock, porcelain stoneware tiles or ordinary ceramic tiles imitating brick-like. Polyurethane foam or extruded polystyrene foam is used as a heater. The thickness of the insulation layer is 20 to 80 mm. Note: practice has shown that the use of thermal panels with foamed polystyrene for lining the basement wall is unacceptable. This option of insulation is short-lived and is characterized by weak heat shielding properties. Finishing with slate and cement particle board. Finishing the basement base with flat slate is a good budget option for the exterior of the house. Asbestos fiber, Portland cement and water are used to make flat slate. The lining of the basement wall is recommended to be made of pressed slate, which is much denser and stronger than its unpressed counterpart. The main advantages of slate materials include resistance to aggression of sedimentary moisture. low coefficient of water absorption, resistance to low temperatures and sudden temperature changes, resistance to open flame. Slate sheets do not burn. Slate can be painted using acrylic primer and acrylic or silicone paint. Long service life within 25 to 30 years. Of the shortcomings, the following factors are necessarily mentioned. Increased fragility. Slate is able to collapse from the effects of a dynamic nature, for example, from being hit by a stone. Asbestos dust generated when cutting sheets during installation is extremely harmful to humans. Sheets are processed only in respirators. Foundation cladding. Cheap cement bonded particle boards, DSP, are made by pressing wood shavings with cement. CBPB is based on chips of a large fraction. The upper layer is formed from chips of a finer fraction. On the building materials market, DSP is offered with a sheet thickness of 8 to 36 mm. For finishing the basement wall, sheets with a thickness of 16 to 20 mm are used. The advantages of the DSP are as follows: good moisture resistance, resistance to low ambient temperatures. High degree of fire safety of DSP sheathing, resistance to decay, ease of machining. There are two disadvantages: the large weight of each element of the skin. Service life does not exceed 15 years. Finishing the basement in a wooden house. When finishing the foundation of a wooden house and lining the basement, special attention is paid to the careful implementation of waterproofing and thermal insulation of the entire basement belt around the building. The wood from which the walls of the dwelling are built is susceptible to the processes of decay and mold reproduction, and is vulnerable to excess sediment and ground moisture. Only reliable protection of the base will prevent the penetration of liquid into the wall part and prevent it from freezing in the cold season. After taking measures for waterproofing and thermal protection of the basement, it can be finished using the technologies described above. The resource of long-term trouble-free operation of a residential building depends on the strength and reliability of the basement belt around the building. With the destruction of the basement, a destructive reaction of the building begins, leading to a deterioration in the appearance of the building and a decrease in its strength qualities, up to local destruction of the walls and foundation. Any way to finish the basement to a certain extent protects and ennobles the facade of the building. Developers are only required to achieve an optimal match between price, quality and decorative properties of the finishing material, so that the basement cladding does not stand out from the overall picture of the building's appearance.